the whiteboard thing so I can see, make sure that my pen is working. Okay, my pen's working. Alright, so alright, so that's what we did yesterday. And so just a couple of books. And I know I've already shown you one. Yes, yeah. What I'll do is it'll be a PDF document that I'll give you a download to, and in fact during lunch break I'll go ahead and create that, so we'll probably have most of it done. Hey Dave? Yeah, no problem. Let me see. So as I mentioned, so the only books that are after last year's update are the, let me see, this one. Alright, so the book that you have, which is the official guide, and I know that some people like CISSP. I know they do, and all-in-ones. Okay, so one of the thing, oh, look at that. So Sean Harris' book has been updated. Interesting. I find that some people find that Sean Harris' book is too much information. On top of that, Sean is gone. So she passed about 2 years ago. So it must not be a Sean Harris book. It must be just a update on her book. So I'm not sure what to say about that book. I know a lot of people like CISSP. I'm okay, so with CISSP, but I really do like this book, as I mentioned. And this book comes with, at the back of each domain, it comes with 15 questions. Okay, and so altogether, you have all the tests. So this one's pretty good as well, right? And here's another one. I'm not sure how you feel about dummies books. Oh, by the way, I have this one too. This one, notice how it's this one's really thin, and it's really not a book, but it's notes. Okay, so if you have to go someplace and want to carry something real light and read it, it's okay. But it's not nowhere near complete, of course. And look at this. I didn't know they had this. Look at this. Wow, this must be something new. Is this already able to, you can buy this thing? Wow. 1,300 unique practice questions. Look at that. This might be good. I haven't checked this one, but because it's by SC², this may be pretty good. Look at that. Oh, look, it has not been released. I was going to say, I've never seen this before. When is it coming? Not sure when it's coming. But, so they put the title out there. I bet if enough people buy it, they will just write it. Oh, look at that. July. This might be good, guys. I would definitely get that. If you're going to take a test, after that. Oh, what I was going to say was the dummies books. I'm not sure how you feel about dummies books. Okay? They're not bad. Not this one. And This one actually comes with the, if you buy the digital version, they give you online access to their tests. So, be good. It's an online thing. So they give you the flashcards and the online exams. And the online test has 300 questions. And, of course, the very lightweight version, right? Lightweight version. And if you do I guess it won't. But if you go to Apple Apps, let me just do IC square one more time. Here we go. And let's see. Those. There's the flashcards. Okay, this looks pretty. It's okay, but they also have the app. I have the app. I think I told you it's just $10, and it's by Cybex. This is by Cybex, but it says official CISSP study app. But if you go there, it is by Cybex, and so it's IC square supported, I suppose. Okay. So those are all the things. I'm actually doing a CISSP course, a little bit different format. I'm doing instead of a 1-week format, I'm doing 2-week format for a customer. So today's the last day on that class too, but we're doing a bunch of exam questions. I find that that's a very nice way to kind of fill the gap. If you don't have time to read the whole book, you know what I mean? Okay. So, any questions before we go into the rest of the material today? Okay, so today's plan is testing, right? Testing and assessment, security operations, and security development, right? So those are the three. And yeah, there is the asset security. Asset security is something that's it's the shortest domain in the book, and it's the new domain in the book. But the content is something that we've been talking about anyway. It's a very commonsensical stuff, and you just have to kind of grind your way through and read through it. So I don't think I'm going to be covering two. I hope that you'll be able to get through it yourself on that. But it is the shortest one, and if you look at it, you'll see the topics that we've covered most of the topics. There are some things that we didn't cover, but I think you'll be able to go through that. And I do have my presentation notes on that, so you can go ahead and I'll be happy for you to just go ahead and go through that. Okay. All right. So the way I like to approach the testing, I do have the presentation material, but what I like to do is I like to kind of give you my whiteboard lecture first, and then we'll go through it. So it'll be much more efficient that way. Okay, testing. Let me go to the whiteboard. The testing and assessment. The testing and assessment, the way I like to approach this is first give you an outline, okay, it's like a framework of ethical hacking techniques. It's just the steps, right? So I'm just going to introduce the steps to you. And this is by EC Council. So it is the ethical hacking steps. Okay, one is reconnaissance. I'll just write it down. And scanning. Third one is gaining access. Fourth one is maintain access. Fifth one is the tracks. Okay, and so this is ethical hacking steps by EC Council, and EC Council are the guys that are giving CEHs, right, Certified Ethical Hacking certifications. But it's not re-on, okay, it's recon. So, see, one thing about my okay, so that's reconnaissance. So the reason why I'm showing you this, because ethical hacking is a type of test. It is it's a type of security test, right? That's why we teach ethical hacking. But ethical hacking isn't the only type of test, but it does cover a lot of components within a test that we do in any case. So this is just a framework that I use to introduce the concept. Okay? And the reconnaissance basically is to find, and just give you just a rough outline on what all these things are. The reconnaissance is to really a process that we go through to narrow down the target, so that we collect all the publicly available information, both physical, both the digital and non-digital, but they're all open source, and the point of it is to find perhaps email addresses that we could later use, find things out there just like Showdown. Showdown has already done some scanning for you, so we'll go out there. So we'll collect all this information, and this is another part of the test. Now, scanning, as we discussed yesterday, there are three types of scanning. So we have something called the ping test, ping scan. Okay, another one is port scan. The other one is vulnerability scan. Right, and as I explained briefly yesterday, ping scan is to find all the hosts that you are able to touch, and from those hosts you find all the services that are available. So we did, when we went through the no scan, the TCP scan, right, all the scans are there to find all the ports. And then, as I showed you on one of my friends' website, you go in there and you interrogate that particular port and try to get more information from that port. Just like in her case, the web server and port 80, one port 80 was open, and then port 80 was an NGINX server, 8.1 something, right? So once you get that name and the version number, you could go to the National Vulnerability Database or something similar to it and find available known vulnerabilities in it, and also to find exploits, so that but not use the exploit at that point, and make give a report. So that will be a vulnerability report. Okay, vulnerability reports in that true sense, you have not really tested it to make sure that it's there, that it's real, because scan results are sometimes not reliable. It just depends on the scanner, and it really does depend on what information they're basing their guess on. Right? So whenever we give a vulnerability report, when customers ask for vulnerability scan, I mean, you get massive reports usually, massive. And so they're best guesses, right? They'll say something like, well, depending upon the vulnerability, you know that it's there. So for example, cross-site scripting is very obvious when it's there. And SQL injection is not. The indication, most of the time, indication of something not right about the database. But you don't actually know if it's really SQL injectable until you try it. Okay, and in vulnerability scans, you don't really try it. One, because that's just there's another step that will do that for you, and two, it's about liability, because when you're testing, the customer will say something like, do not penetrate into our system, but do find vulnerabilities, right? If that's the case, that's all you can do is a best guess. Right? Then let's say you have like 200 vulnerabilities, and there are, let's say 20 critical ones, and the customers look and say, wow, are these really there? And you say, no, we don't know. We don't know. It's just a vulnerability scan. We think it's there. Okay. The customer says, look, can you find out if it's really there? And then you say, okay. So you know what you're signing up to, because you see, when customers say, please find if that's really there, what they're saying is that please try and intrude into my system. So and sometimes it's please try and DOS my system, right? And which they may not understand what that means. So you have to make sure you educate the customer, and then do the step 3, which is gaining access. So this is normally what's called a penetration test or pen test. Gaining access. Okay, and so this is, and a lot of times you can't, a lot of times you cannot actually exploit the vulnerabilities, because as you recall, some of the vulnerabilities, although it may be there, you may not be able to do it because it's hard, or it's it's very complex, or that it was a mistake, okay, that the scanner made a mistake, or and a compensating control to stop people from actually exploiting it, right? So it could be one of many reasons why you can't exploit it, but sometimes you can. And when you can, then you report and say, look, here it is. I was able to get in, and here's what we can do. So we know for sure that it is here. Okay. And although I've talked about how in the scanning, you're looking for the the information about the particular service, like a server, and then finding a version number and going back to the National Vulnerability Database and looking for well-known vulnerabilities. There are tests that you do that are not well-known. In that case, CVE is not going to help you because it's not in there, right? So in that case, you're not looking for vulnerabilities in the operating system, or you're not looking for vulnerabilities in the platform, like IIS and Apaches of the world. The application that you're going after is brand new. A customer just wrote it, and they just want to know if it's vulnerable. In that case, you're really you're really blind in that way. So you poke around the system and find vulnerabilities, but it's usually not the network, not the operating system. It's usually about the application that they've written. It's a custom application. So yeah, so you can have those kind of tests. So maintaining access and clearing the tracks, excuse me, could also be the part of a testing. So for instance, maintaining access part is, can you, after you penetrate into the system, can you install something like rootkit and put a backdoor in, and can the security people find these things, find these anomalies? So, but it's very rarely done. It's usually pen test. That's when we usually draw the line. Says, we're able to get in. That's it. you know, if we were able to get in, that means we should be able to do all the other things like maintaining access. But just briefly, so maintaining access then is, you know, the hackers may not be able to do whatever they want to do just in that moment when they penetrate into the system. Like, that's just the beginning. Once they penetrate into the system, maybe they get in as you know, guest. So the you know, one typical thing that you have to do is to escalate privilege so that you can do something. And you escalate privilege vertically into administrator or horizontally into another user. And then after you have enough privilege to install something, you install a backdoor so you don't have to come through the front door anymore. Front door is usually being watched, right, by IDSs, so you create yourself a backdoor, right? Just like all the other ones we've been talking about, right? These backdoors. And you install maybe things like keylogger, whatever you want to do, right? So the keylogger will record all the keys on the server if someone is typing on the server, and hopefully the people that's typing on the server are like administrators, you know, giving you more good information. So that's maintaining access. And then including the tracks is that now you're finished with it, you're leaving. Oh, by the way, maintaining access, I think, I'm trying to remember, Verizon just came up with the data breach report for last year, and I think it was there, I read it someplace, but it seems that a lot of the attacks that they find, the attackers are in there like 4 months. In the Panama Papers we discussed, I think they were in there for 4 years. So maintaining access means keep low profile and stays in there, and then collects information or, you know, steal information. So it could be a long time. And then you clear the tracks. When you're ready to go, you're supposed to make sure that you're not, you know, you don't leave any tracks so that people can't come after you and maybe perhaps, like, you know, arrest you. So it's about modifying the logs and making sure that, you know, whatever you did is not logged. There are a couple of things they can do. When they first penetrate into the system, if it's like Windows, you can try to disable logging. But if you disable logging, like event logging, the error logging, the security logging, admin may, you know, find out about it, right? They say, oh, logs not being maintained, what's going on? So that may not be the smartest idea, but you don't want to leave the logs. And usually these logs are not saved in the host itself. It's usually saved in a totally different server, the logging server. So it may be a bit difficult, but that's what you need to do. You need to clear many tracks as you can, okay? And that'll be it. Okay. So the main testing part, though, that I'm going to be talking about more is obviously the scanning, the gaining access part, right? So these are the tests. Questions on the ethical hacking steps? Okay. So when we do the testing, when do we do these testing? So the ethical hacking testing can be done at the tail end of development if they want to, okay? Or normally, though, this whole thing is done during deployment, okay? Once they're in the environment that they're going to deploy in, you know, we do the ethical hacking test usually, and a lot of times we also do it during their operation. So as the application is running, you know, it's been running for a while, they'll say, look, we have to do this every 3 months or something. And so we do these types of testing, okay? And customer usually say something, let's do a vulnerability testing, or please do a pen testing. But testing starts early, right? If you recall from the SDLC, maybe you don't recall that, because I probably haven't really talked too much on it. Is that for the oh, by the way, you do have to know the SDLC, so let me just go ahead and introduce that, right? So SDLC. Cycle. Okay, so SDLC. Okay, and some people call this systems development lifecycle, but regardless. Okay, in the process where you're creating systems, usually you follow very defined steps. Even if you do agile, you still do these steps. So the first one is, well, step 0 is usually somebody has a great idea. For a system, says, hi, I think if we have this kind of system, we'll be way ahead of the competition. Let's do it, right? Let's go into the new business areas. Let's enhance our business. Let's, get whatever, the great ideas. And hopefully not all business great ideas, well, not hopefully, but not all great business great ideas do not become a system because there's a vetting process in business side. But if it does come to the IT side, right, if it does come to the IT side, first step is usually requirements phase. Okay, and there's obviously no testing done here, because you're coming up with the basically a functional requirements. And functional requirements are what the system must do, and non-functional requirements are what system must be, such as performance requirements. And during this requirement, you have to come up with the security requirements as well. Okay, and the reason I have it in here is because on the requirements phase, when you have all these requirements, security requirements such as security functional requirements, security non-functional requirements, depending upon what type of security you need for the system, you actually start to create the test document. Right, you're creating a test document because these are the things you're going to be testing. At the end, when you give it to the user, as in user acceptance testing, user are going to look at all the things they requested and make sure it's there. Okay. Now they may not have requested security requirements, those things that are put in there, because from the nature of what the customer wants to do, you need to have those security requirements in there. But regardless, after you come up with the security functional and non-functional requirements, it goes into the test document. So at the end of the game, at the end of the day, you're going to make sure that you have all the items in that SDLC, the testing in the requirements document, in the test document. Okay, so it's like any other test. Security is not it's not anything special because it's in there from the beginning. Okay, and as we go through the usually the next one is design. Okay, development. Deployment. Hi, Terry. Got something for me? Yeah, so some customers will put the quality control in the deployment phase, but they may also have it all throughout. So I'm just doing a typical one. Terry, where do you usually put the QC QA cycle? Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. So it is. So it's a very good point that you bring out, Terry. The security, right? The security of the system is very much a quality control, quality assurance function, because we're saying, hey, does this thing do what it says it's supposed to do? right? And normally vulnerabilities are things that says, no, it doesn't, right? So it does more, right? It has more like security vulnerable functions. Yeah. 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 Yep. I understand the third party coming in. Yep. Um, it's very good. So I have a question for you, Terry. So when you do that, okay, um, the QC and QA, um, have you heard about DevOps? Because it's in your book as well, but it's quite new, right? Relatively new way of managing projects and products. DevOps. Have you heard about that, Terry? Okay. So let me just put that last step in here. So 5 is operation. There is a 6th step for system development lifecycle where, you know, the software, the system has been running for a while and now you don't need it anymore, so you terminate it. So there's that step. But if we're just looking at the development of the system, then this will probably be good enough. Okay, all right. So you actually do pen testing then, right? So during development, but perhaps like at the tail end of it, right? Because because you have to have it all integrated. Yeah, yeah, very good. That's very good. Python modules to do it. Okay, you automate the stuff. So that's basically. Let me see here. That's basically what I want to actually cover. Is that notice that. So this, let's say this is the SDLC, and testing is. So you're starting to create the test document, and the test document continues on, and the chances are you're going to be using this test document during deployment for user acceptance testing. Okay, but in between you may be using that test document, partially the parts that applies to them, right? So development, you have heavy duty testing. And it's usually not a security testing, but it is basically a functional, non-functional testing as well. Okay, and the DevOps is finding these 3 steps: development and operation. So that is, once the programmer or the programming group said, we're done, okay, or we're done with this phase, or we're done with this module, it's ready to be deployed, okay, what they'll do, the image that I have is they'll push a button that says go, right, a green button, big green button in the screen, go. And when they say go, everything that's automated, like what Terry, you just mentioned, all the testing, the changing of the data from the testing data to the actual data, right? So all these things are automated, how we used to do it manually, and then boom, it just gets deployed onto the operational environment. So they've actually made those 3 steps into 1 step. Or actually the deployment phase anyway. When you finish with development and boom, after you finish with it, boom, right? So it goes straight from development into operational. That's why they call it DevOps. Okay. And the scary part about the whole thing, for me, is I think the idea is fantastic, right? It's trying to catch on. A lot of companies are doing it. And usually companies are able to do this, DevOps, is one, companies that are already doing Agile. And if you don't know what an Agile is, it is in the book, so please take a look at it. But Agile is a new project management methodology, right? And it goes completely opposite to something like the traditional waterfall model. In fact, Agile came out, there's something called Agile Manifesto, manifesto that says, look, we don't like waterfall, we don't like those ways, so we're going to come up with something that is very different. I mean, that's what the manifesto says. And so they do. So, and the need for DevOps, right, is because in agile development, usually they'll use something like, the project management methodologies called Scrum, Kanban. There are various names given to project management for agile, and you probably heard of extreme programming, right? Those are the development methodologies for agile. But what's common in both is that they produce something called the MVP. So MVP is minimal viable product. So a minimal viable product means what is the smallest unit of thing that I can create that is that I can deploy after I'm finished with it. And these MVPs, for example, Scrum, which is pretty popular project management methodology for Agile, is 2 weeks. So you do something called the sprints. Sprints are usually 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, you're coming out with something new that you're going to deploy. Right? And that's a pretty hefty schedule. Every 2 weeks, something new comes in, and you're deploying it into the operational environment. So in that case, you can't just say, oh, can we have all these people that come together and spend like 5 days or a week for testing? You can't, because every 2 weeks you have to deploy. So what that means is that the manual process is out. You have to automate most of the stuff. Okay, so it's all about automation. Now, what you'll find though, in the book they lightly touch. So in the IC Square book, they lightly touch Agile. Okay. And they lightly touch DevOps. They don't go that much into detail. Okay. The characteristic about DevOps, and you may get questions around this on DevOps, is that security is not a biggest thing in here, obviously. Okay, and we'll go into a little bit about why security testing as it is currently is not really conducive to DevOps. By the way, who does DevOps in your organization? Nobody's doing Alteri? Are you doing it? You currently do it. Oh, okay. So very nice. Very nice. But how do you automate Metasploit into the whole process? I'm sorry, is the Team Foundation server, you write the stories. Okay, so it is scripted. So there's scripted testing that's automated. That. Okay. So you're the handyman. You can do all. Yeah. So here's the couple things about application and security that is maybe not, a lot of network-based people may not appreciate, right? Because I'm not sure if you found this to be true, but a lot of people in security, IT security, are from the networking background, so they're very strong in networking. This is my own theory, but I'm sure it's pretty close to the truth, is that because I've kind of lived through the phases, is that a lot of money went into security initially in networking. All the devices, all the security devices and all those things, and the testers too in security had to understand network. So networking people saw that as a next their career path, so they went into security, and then it was networking for a long time for security, and then came the OSs and the platforms. But the application part hasn't really caught on yet. That is, we are finding a lot of flaws in the application, mainly because a lot of the networking vulnerabilities has been locked down because we have all these great boxes. Okay. So now, the hackers are gravitating towards the weakest point, which is the application. Okay. But the issue is, I think it is starting to catch on, but not quite as much as it has caught on for the networking world. Is that we need more people in the application security field. Okay. And I still see this. It's really hard for application security field people to come in. I mean, we do see some, and I'm one of those. But we do see some, but companies are not really helping. Yeah, Terry. And I'm hoping this trend is going to change. Yeah, exactly. So it's all about having the resources to educate the application developers, because I do application security classes, and when they do come in, they love it. It's just that they don't have the opportunity to come in. Companies said, look, why are we spending this money on the developers? They should be developing, not doing security. And I said, you don't understand. A lot of the flaws come in during the development phase. Yeah, and what's amazing to me is that when I do get these developers in, sometimes they come in because they're forced to come in, and sometimes they come in because they're really interested, right? But for those people that are forced to come in, to and say, look, these are some things that you do that you can help reduce the vulnerabilities, because it comes in from how you program and the kind of tools that you use. They'll spend the day try to do like SQL injection and cross-site scripting, all that stuff. Those low-lying fruit type of stuff. And most of the time, a lot of these people just throw their hands up in the air and say, I can't do this. So then I'll say, well, why not? So what's the issue? They say, I can't think like this. And I say, think like what? Well, think like a hacker. That's what they say. Yeah, get that, right, Terry? Why can't they think like a hacker? All they have to do is change their mind from making to breaking. Yeah. So so this is part of testing, by the way. Just to get back to the where I was talking about, is there are a lot of testing that's done during development. And there are a lot of tests that's being done in deployment, right? These are, shh, hang on, just a minute. Just a minute, please. Sorry about that. My dog started bark because there was a guy cutting my grass. Okay, so yeah, Terry, sorry about that. Yeah, I was wondering what was going on with the dog. So a lot of the testing is done during development. Okay, and as Terry mentions, so here's the thing. What if somebody goes through the requirements phase, okay, and they don't do a good job on security requirements? So the security requirements aren't on the design document. And then it comes down to the development guys, and they look at it and say, okay, so I'm going to develop what they say they want me to develop. Okay. Now, if you have someone who is highly aware, if you have some developers that has highly aware sense of security, they may look at it and say, well, look at this thing, this requirement thing, maybe the multi-factor authentication, or maybe fail close, fail open type of stuff. It's not in here. What should we do? Type of stuff. Now, if they go ahead and do it on their own, that is to put security features at the development phase that wasn't specified at the requirements phase, that is not a good form, right? Because now you're spending extra time and extra money and extra testing on things that wasn't requested. Okay, but not to say that that's not what, you know, the best thing for to happen is a requirement supposed to come from, you know, upstream, right? So downstream on the developer side, they're supposed to develop what they're told to develop. Okay, but it's missing, they have to point that out and say, look, you know, it's missing, so what do you want us to do? And business may have made a decision early on, says, look, we're not going to do security or whatever, right? So it's a business decision, and you do have to remember that in your CISSP book, what is stressed is that we as a security people, we can advise, but we cannot force a company to do something, okay? So, but regardless of perhaps certain security requirements are missing, you know, when it comes to the development team, what they do in development can cause a lot of flaws. And a lot of the flaws that we see and the things that are pointed out to us are really at, you know, what the developers do. That's why they need to be educated, so that they can stop the kind of flaws that they themselves put in. Okay, but the issue is that people are not educating the developers. Okay, I think that's just it. I think developers are very capable of doing these things, but companies see and say, look, developers there to develop stuff. They're there to create. Okay. They're, you know, why are we putting extra tasks on them like security? And by the way, security, look, it kind of, right, it goes counter, doesn't it, to creating things. You could hold people back from doing certain things. So I still see that a lot of companies do not put emphasis on the application. They are starting to, but you know, it's just the beginning, and hopefully this is going to be a growing field. Okay. Thinking about these developers saying, I can't think this way. You know, it's mainly the mindset. The developers create, they make things, okay? Whereas the security people talk about, you know, how can we break this thing? Or how can hackers break this thing, right? So if we talk about testing, there's something called the positive testing and negative testing. So positive testing is to making sure that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. And negative testing, such as regression testing, is you're trying to see what is it doing that's not supposed to be doing. Okay, so hence, you know, what Terry mentions about the event monitors and stuff, you know, come on, check it, right? Check the log and make sure that, you know, make sure that it's not doing what it's not supposed to be doing, right? Okay. Excuse me. So that's the concept of how to add, you know, the testing within the SDLC. Excuse me. Now, let's go into two. Let me see. Hopefully, I'm not losing my voice. Here we go. There are two main different types of testing. One is called the static testing. Okay, this is at the development phase, and the other one is called the dynamic testing. Okay, so the static testing. Let me just go not use a red here. And I'm going to scroll up. Okay, I just scrolled up. Okay, two types of testing. One is static testing. The other one is dynamic testing. Just realize that when my pen starts to work weird like this, it means that there's just too much content on this page. So I'm going to be switching the page pretty soon. Okay, when you do a static testing, right? Static testing means you're testing the system without running it. Okay, so if you're not running the system, how do you test it? Well, you do one type of static testing is code review. Okay, I'm just going to put as an example code review. Okay, and code review is often done during development. Not even at the end. I mean, they'll do it throughout. Okay, so code review is you take the source code and you review it. Of course, you know, modern systems have millions and millions of lines of code. A million lines of code, and you know, you can't be doing this manually, obviously. So you do tools Um, and I was just trying to come up with the name of the tool. Oh, it was right at the tip of my tongue. Fortify. So Fortify is a very well-known tool. It's owned by HP now. It used not be. And you do code review on it. And you look, code review is looking for patterns, right, of where insufficient programming for security. They'll look for those flaws. And at the end, though, you do have to have eyeballs checking them too, of course. Okay, but that's basically what code review is. And you're looking for places that the inputs, right, where it's exposed, where you have inputs to the outside world, where the data comes in, and making sure that all the the input is validated. In fact, output's validated, and you do boundary checking and all that. So those things are being tested, okay, in a static testing. It's pretty expensive in many ways. One, the tool is expensive. Two, as it was mentioned by Terry, the person who conducts this test should be a developer, okay, but not the person who wrote the program. How many of you are developers? But developers usually look at their product as a piece of art, right? You worked on this. This is your little baby, and if somebody starts to, you may overlook things. It's yours. So have somebody else look at it, okay? So then you say, that's not enough. The person who checks it, one, has to know how to use the tool, two, has to be a developer, three, has to be third party, somebody's other than the person or group that wrote the program, and fourth, very importantly, this person has to understand security. So then you say, where do you find that? Where do you find people like that? Okay, and my dog just said, me. Right, but it's expensive to find people like that. Okay, so maybe that's the reason why a lot of people don't do it. But I do know some companies that they do a code reviews in the fashion that I just mentioned it all the time. It's within their process, and I think they're one of the more forward-looking companies. Okay, but it's expensive. It takes time. Right. So then the other way of doing the testing is called dynamic testing. Okay, so dynamic testing is now, it's opposite to static testing, so you're testing the application, the system, as it is running. Okay, as it's running. And the dynamic testing then is you see the application running and you're trying to break it. Or you're doing a negative testing on it. Can we do something to it that we're not supposed to do? And it's really interesting. A lot of the testing is dynamic testing, the kind of stuff that I do, is because the customers, they want to just, because of compliance, they have to do like application scanning, and so it's pretty much embedded into the process that they have to do dynamic testing. So let's say I would go in there and I find a flaw. Maybe let's look from let's say SQL injection from the username and password field. I put in the SQL statement, and boom, right? Kind of show them that, look, hey, I was able to get all your list of all your people from the login screen. So I'll call the developer and say, because they say, well, show me what you did. And so I'll go and I'll start typing in like an SQL injection code right into the username field. And they'll say, stop. And I'll say, why? They'll say, you're not supposed to do that. Right? See, that's the mentality, isn't it? Right? They know how they wrote it because they know what it's supposed to do. Blind to the fact of what they're not supposed to do. Right? And they do really have a aversion to that. Okay, so what are you doing that for? Type of stuff. Well, we're here to break it, and maybe that is a cultural difference. Okay, so this process of putting stuff in to break things, it's usually called fuzzing. Okay, fuzzing, because you are putting it in. It's not willy-nilly put in, but we do have some, method to our madness. And of course, a lot of the scanners will do fuzzing because why do something that is very, structured? It could be automated. Okay. So that is the dynamic testing, and the testing will be either Blackbox, Greybox, and Whitebox. So what's, yeah, Terry? For each what? The black box testing, the gray box testing, and white box testing? Oh, right. Okay. Oh, I see. I see. Gray box and white box. I'm not, okay, so why is the gray box done by developers? Because they are the only people we have that is capable of doing it. Okay, that makes sense. All right, fine. Yeah, so let me explain what these things are. So the black box is you give tester very minimal information, almost close to none. So if you're testing a web app, you say, oh, here's the URL, go for it. That's the black box, right? The gray box, let me go with the white box. The white box then, here's all my source code, here's all my structures, here's all the systems that we're using, please go for it. That would be the white box. They have access to everything, okay? Gray box is somewhere in the middle. So for Greybox, it's like, let's say, and we do Greybox all the time. Let's say it's a testing on a online store, okay? And in online stores, when people buy things, they become a user, right? So they register and they become a user. So usually on the Greybox testing, they'll say, okay, here, we've made a user for you. Let's see what you can do as a user. So as a user in the system, you have more information, obviously, but you're not going to have all the information as much as Whitebox would. Right? So you do have some privileges that you don't have in a black box, because in the black box, you're trying to like break in to the thing. Okay? So the gray box is what happens after you break in. You know, you become a user, then what? Right? And that's why I asked Terry. He says, look, you know, right? Because gray box is still almost like a, you know, it's close to being a black hat. Well, black box testing, but a little different. You have a little bit of more information, but right, you're still trying to exploit it. Okay. So those are the black box, gray box, and white box testing. So the question is, why would anybody do a black box testing? What is that for? What do you think the purpose of the black box is? End user experience with someone who will most likely use the application. So Terry, in your black box testing, do they do security testing? Realistic experience. Right. Yeah. Very good. So I was going to say the type of black box testing that I was thinking about is user testing, but the user is the hacker. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. So some companies, not because of compliance, because with compliance, you have to do things like what you just mentioned, Terry, right? These are typical type of attacks that, as a minimum, as an organization, you have to protect yourself from. But if you do a black box testing using a hacker, you may get a little bit more, right? More in-depth testing when you do it. But of course, it's all comes with cost. And let's talk a little bit about the testers. Okay, so because it's good that Terry brought up that he actually asked his end users to do the black box testing. Okay, security testing, the kind of end users that we're thinking of are these. White hats, gray hats, and a black hat. white hat, gray hat, and black hat. So white hat, well, let's say black hat. So usually these are the unwelcome guests, hackers, right? Malicious hackers. So they're called the black hat. Okay. The white hat hopefully has equal or better skill than a black hat, but hopefully, you know, equal. But they are for the force of good, right? So they are the testers, white hats. But they are skilled hackers. Gray hat is a scary thing. So gray hat, they have a day job, and they have not the day job, right? So in one respect, they're doing black hat activities, but in other, they're doing white hat activities, right? And I think a good example of a gray hat are the guys who provided the iPhone decryption tool to the FBI. Okay, because obviously they broke into the iPhone in that particular version, older version of iPhone 5. So they're black hat in that way because I'm sure you know, Apple didn't allow for that to happen. So they're black hats. But they actually sold the tool to FBI. So they're white hats. So they're in between, they're gray hats. Okay? And so ideally, you have an opportunity to have a white hat doing the black box testing so that what they are looking for is deeply into the security side of it. Okay? Now, so the black box testing for security usually is you're testing for, you know, what can a hacker do when all they have access to initially is an URL. Okay? But what do you think would be a problem with the black box testing by a white hat? Jerry, can you think of some? Because you already do these types of testing. Right. So the black box doesn't. That's right. That's right. That's right. It's a trial and error, exactly. So because it's a trial and error, just because a person come back and say, "Wow, Terry, this application is great. You know, we didn't find anything at all." You know, you probably don't have a nice, you know, warm fuzzy feeling because you don't know if you really do have a great system or maybe the pen tester just wasn't up to snuff, right? So you actually don't know. So my suggestion that I give it to the customer is they insist on black box. I say, okay, let's do the black box testing because obviously you want to have it. But if you really want to test the application for you know, vulnerabilities, I think, you know, we should also do the white box testing too. Okay, so that you can find it, right? As a minimum, gray box testing. But I'll usually promise the customer that we'll use different people and that they won't talk to each other during testing, so that the black box doesn't, you know, folks doesn't get contaminated with the white box information. Okay, so yeah, very good. So let's go ahead. We have, of course, we'll continue on. The testing will be another hour. Okay, the module will be another hour. So let's take a 10-minute break. Okay. Really? I'll look that up. Okay. Anything that has a tour in it, yeah. Is that right? You attend every year? Fantastic. All right, so Terry, so now you become, hopefully you are a white hat, and I believe that you are, because you're from Hawaii, so there you go. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and when we come back, we will continue on with this theme. Thank you.